7:30, we're back in session. Our next issue is the adoption of the consent agenda. Are there items any city council member would like to pull? Or
is there any comment? You need to ask for public comment on the consent agenda as well.
And is there any comment on the public agenda? Are there any public comment on the adoption of the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, now we'll move on to public hearings 3A, which is quasi-judicial. I shall read the title, which is an ordinance of the City of Vero Beach, Florida, requested by Roger Lytle, I believe it is, amending the official zoning map by changing the zoning district designation of RM-13, high-density, multiple-family residential district, to POI, which is Professional Office and Institutional District, for property located at 915 East Causeway Boulevard, Lot 8, Block 4, Pelican Cove 2, subdivision, containing 0.358 of an acre, more or less, providing for an effective date requested by the Planning and Development Director. Does anyone have any interest in this on the City Council at all?
No, Mr. Mayor, but I do need to disclose ex parte conversation I had with Bruce Barquette. I'd been reviewing the P&Z meeting notes and had a question of one of his comments. So.
All right, so reveal. Are there applicants or people to swear in?
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Disclosing that you had a question, I think we need to know what the question was and what the answer was. I mean, it would just be beneficial for the council so we all are on the same page.
Would you like me to respond to that?
Yes.
Is he being sworn in, or does he?
Well, I'm an attorney. We don't have to get sworn in. We're sworn in when we be admitted to the bar.
Okay.
What we give is argument, not necessarily testimony. I mean, anyway, Ms. Turner read the minutes from the P&Z meeting and asked me about why the neighboring properties weren't included in 3 zoning, and I explained to her that it was costly for them to apply and that there was no advantage for them because they were already grandfathered in. Okay. It was about a 10-second conversation.
Thanks.
All right. I believe that brings us to staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the record, I'm Tim McGarry, the Director of Planning and Development for the city. Mr. Roger Lytle is requesting the rezoning of approximately 0.34 acres of lot located on 915 East Causeway Boulevard from RM13, which is multifamily high density, to POI, Professional Office Institutional. As you can see on the map, the site is located approximately 120 feet from Club Drive, from the intersection of Club Drive and East Causeway Boulevard, and approximately 300 feet from the intersection of East Causeway Boulevard and A1A. The lot is currently vacant. As you can see on the map, properties on both sides of the subject lot and along the length of Causeway from Club Drive to Coral Avenue are zoned RM13. To the north of the lot across Marigold Lane are R1A single family, which are 10,000 minimum size lots. South of the RM13 zone property is also zoned R1A, and to the east is the park, and to the west is C1 commercial properties. Adjacent to the west of the property is a law office, as you can see on the aerial. To the east is a seven-story 54-unit Royal Riviera condos, which are at 50 units an acre. On the south side of the East Causeway along Club Drive, a real estate office to the farthest west, followed by 2 lots that have apartments, and then a medical office. Beyond the medical office is the East Wind Apartments, which occupy the remaining area along there. And looking at the 2 different zoning going from RM13 to POI, in brief, the 2 zoning classifications share 3 similar permitted uses: single-family residences, nursing homes, and adult congregate living facilities. However, in the RM13, assisted care living facilities may have 18 units per acre if the adults are 55 and over with kitchen facilities. Other than the various conditional uses, the major difference between the two districts is that the POI allows various professional offices, medical and dental offices, banks and financial institutions, and personal services. It specifically does not allow multifamily or retail uses. The staff did its review based on the standards for considering such amendments as required in the city's land development regulations. The first thing the applicant is required to justify the amendment, including specific reasons warning the amendment. In its application, the applicant states that the zoning is needed to ensure that the adjacent properties are compatible with each other. If you again look at the map, the abutting property to the west is a finance office. Across the street from that office is a real estate, and to the southeast of the subject property is a medical office. These are all conditional uses which are no longer allowed in the RM13 district, which were approved back in the 1980s. But these are also, not only are they no longer allowed in that district, but they're also vested almost in perpetuity under our ordinances, which allow them to even increase slightly in size, allow them to even change uses within the categories that were allowed back in the ordinance before 1991. And also, they're allowed some modicum level of retail activity in those, as long as they don't become a principal activity. Therefore, the staff agreed with the applicant and found that the character of the immediate vicinity of the subject lot is dominated by types of office professionals typically found in the POI district, which the applicant could not have on his lot. In the opinion of the staff, such development pattern renders moot any argument that this may be spot zoning because you have a little piece of property there that seems to be isolated due to the predominant nature, office character of the neighborhood. Therefore, property would not be treated unjustifiably different than other office uses surrounding properties. It would not create a disharmony within the surrounding area. In a related issue at the Planning and Zoning Board hearing, a question was raised during if the area is dominated by POI type uses, why not rezone all the properties, which is a good question. The applicant had indicated that it had been approached by at least one property owner, but the property owner had no interest such going into that. The major problem is that such rezoning may have an adverse impact on the vesting rights of those three conditional uses. Furthermore, it would make the two apartment parcels non-conforming uses in that district. Therefore, without other property owners voluntarily coming forward, in fairness to the applicant, the issue was dropped from further consideration at the hearing. The staff found that the applicant was justified in requesting the rezoning due to the presence and locations of the existing grandfathered conditional uses along the East Causeway Boulevard. Staff looked at the consistency of the rezoning with the comprehensive plan and found it consistent with the pertinent policies, particularly that in policy 1.15 that a POI is an appropriate use under the under the residential high multifamily designation, and the property is also located in a residential high future land use. It is not located in an arterial, but it is on a collector, so it's close enough to the arterial we felt it met that. The property location in relationship to other uses meets the requirements of Policy 116, provides a continuation of existing uses and a transition between the more densely residential use to the east and the more commercial development to the west. The proposed zoning is consistent with the purpose statement for the POI districts to designate areas for primary office uses and provide a transition for the more intense commercial use between the more intense commercial uses and residential uses. Staff found that the designation is compatible with the existing single-family residential uses to the north and condo apartment uses due to the presence already of existing professional offices in that location, especially ones that are grandfathered in perpetuity. It would not change the character of the East Causeway Boulevard, which has already been established by the development approvals in the 1980s. In reviewing the impacts of this, when you look at the difference in zoning, you pick the most intensive use that could be provided under the different zoning classifications. So we looked under a drive-in bank, which is always under the POI, against, I believe, 5 units, and can be placed apartments on that property were developed under the RM13. In the review of this level of service difference, sufficient capacity is available to support the future demand. In fact, there may be some reduction in demand in certain of the services due to the type of use that would be on there. The biggest difference would be in traffic. Obviously, a drive-in bank facility generates more traffic than a 5-unit apartment would. In the traffic impact assessment done by the consultant and reviewed by our staff, and compare it to a 5-unit apartment development, approximately 230 new vehicle trips per day would be generated by this that type of use. However, it'd be very unlikely that property is suitable for a drive-in or a financial bank at that location anyway, but we have to look at it from the worst-case scenario. And I also want to point out, it should be noted that, remember, they still have to go through a site plan review. It's got a hearing process. The planning and zoning board's involved, and you get in much more detail on traffic patterns and delivery of trucks and all the other issues that come into play. So at this point, we're just looking at a broad brush stroke to make sure it would fit in there. However, all based on the information provided by the consultant, acceptable levels of service would still remain on the A1A intersection as well as the segments on A1A. Based on the analysis and findings that the staff's presented here and in the staff report, we're recommending approval of the rezoning. The Planning and Zoning Board held a public hearing on March 6th and unanimously approved moving the request forward to the City Council based on the findings and recommendations of the staff. I request that the staff report be placed in the public record as long as the application and supporting materials by the applicant. And unless you have specific questions of me, the applicants, I believe, attorney may want to have a few words with you all.
Are there questions
Yes.
for Mr. McGarry?
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Fletcher.
Did you do did you do a study for the level of service on Causeway?
Yes, it was all done within the vicinity of the influence area, they call it. We looked at it. And we go through the county's traffic engineering. They're also
I understand. Thank you.
Mrs. Turner, you have a question?
I just wanted to thank Mr. McGarry for addressing some of my earlier questions about the whether it was a spot zoning issue or looking at the whole area. Thank you.
Applicant, is there a presentation?
I just had one question.
I'm sorry, Mrs.
Typically, when we have a zoning change like this, you do send out notices to the neighborhoods?
Yes, every property owner within 500 feet, and we also are provided a notice, and we also post the property itself.
Did you get anything back from any of the neighborhood residents?
I'm trying to remember. I don't recall getting anything from a neighbor. If we had somebody at the condos, we may have had a call, but it was more of an informational thing. We didn't really have any comments.
But you didn't get a real nasty uprise or anything like that?
Oh, no. They come quickly when that happens.
Okay. Any further questions? Applicant, then?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bruce Barquette for the applicant. I just wanted to thank Mr. McGarry and the staff. It was a real pleasure to work with them. They're extremely thorough, extremely professional, and it's been a real pleasure. At the P&Z hearing, there were two neighbors that had a question. One was from the 7-story condo unit on the east, and she just simply asked whether the city had sent notices to people up north in their northerly residences. And Mr. McGarry explained that the city just sends notices to the people's residence as it's registered in the city, which is certainly reasonable. And then there was another gentleman who lived across the street to the north, not directly across the street, but on that street. And after it was explained that this would still have to go through site plan, he expressed his support for the application. He felt like he was in real estate and he understood why the applicant was doing this, and he felt like POI was probably just as beneficial to the neighborhood as a multifamily would be under the current zoning. So with that, I'll answer any questions, but again, thank you for the opportunity.
Any questions? All right. There is an opportunity for public comment. You would need to be sworn in. Does anyone want to come forward? Seeing none. Are there closing arguments, Mr. McGarry?
No, Mayor, other than what the staff still were recommending approval, as well as the Planning and Zoning Board.
Action by City Council, either action or discussion as you see fit.
I'd move to adopt as presented, Mayor.
What's the effective date?
This is the
This
public
is the
hearing.
final, okay. I'll
Second.
Or Ms. Turner, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Mrs. Bach, I believe you call the roll.
Mr. Fletcher?
Yes.
Ms. Graves?
Yes.
Mrs. Sterner?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mayor Winger?
Yes.
Thank you, Council.
All right, we move on to 3B resolutions, and these are a single reading, and are they, how do we vote on them?
Roll call vote.
Okay. B1 is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Vero Beach, Florida, repealing resolution number 2012-07 relating to dog exercise and walking activities on certain city-owned land adjacent to Bob Summers Park, providing for an effective date requested by City Council. This would be who? You, Mr.?
Mayor, I can address that.
Okay.
This is basically repeals the resolution that the council had adopted a year or so ago. Obviously, it's been replaced by a lease with the Friends of the Vero Beach Dog Exercise Area. So we recommend approval.
I have a question, or we can do public comment first.
Go ahead, Ms. Graves.
My question is, let's say the lease, someone walks away from it or it ends, then if people want to continue to use that land for dog exercise, would the council then be required to pass another resolution allowing that if the dog park were to go away?
We probably would
Okay.
recommend that it be readopted.
All right, there's an opportunity for public hearing. If anyone would like to come forward. Seeing none, I'll close public hearing. Council comments or motion as you see fit, please.
Move for approval.
Second.
Mrs. Bach?
Mr. Fletcher?
Yes.
Ms. Graves?
Yes.
Mrs. Sterner?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mayor Winger?
Yes. All right, B2, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Vero Beach, Florida, granting to Sharkbait International Incorporated a concession license for rental of umbrellas and chairs at South Beach Park, providing for an effective date requested by the Recreation Director.
Well, just as a point of information, as you know, this has been around for several weeks, if not months. The other is it's gone in front of the Recreation Commission and was voted out as a recommendation to the City Council. And what this does is grant that franchise, but it's a non-exclusive franchise to Sharkbait. Also, it has a provision in the termination clause of a 30-day notice by either party. So it's can be pretty short term if we deem it not appropriate. It also gives the Recreation Director and City Manager a lot of area where we can control where the vendor sets up and how they operate. One of the side benefits, there's an ATV that is also being used by the vendor, but he has offered that up to be used by our lifeguards on occasions that we might need it.
All right, public hearing. Anyone would like to come forward? Seeing nobody, will close public hearing. Councilman, I had one comment in that it looked like the area delineated was anything north of the lifeguard stand, which would seem to be most of the area, which would concern me a little bit. That seems a bigger area than we talked about. You just referred to it, and it's under the control of the Recreation Director. So
that is correct.
Mayor, we did to the north. I know you had suggested to be to the south of the lifeguard stand, but in discussions with Rob in Recreation and with the applicant, there's going to be storage for the chairs and umbrellas and what have you, and that'll be at the north end of the beach, and it was more convenient to that location. Rob can maybe perhaps...
I don't have any problem with the north versus the south. I guess my only question is what percentage of the beach is it?
We will be able to control that, and it'll be a very small portion. And the fact that obviously we will leave a large area for the public. We've made that very clear to the applicant, so I don't think there's going to be any issues there. We also control the type of signage he has and the verbiage that has to be used on the signs.
Further comment by Council.
We have Wayne, we have a lease or something for liability in our contract.
Yeah, the agreement does cover liability. I'm not sure. Scott, have we gotten your insurance documents yet? The endorsement? Yeah, Scott here is the actual.
And it is $2 million per occurrence.
Yes, it's $2 million per incident, $3 million total aggregate. And basically, it's the same type of policy that we offer to the premium resorts at Vero Beach.
Okay. And do you know, have we gotten the endorsement from your insurance company and the policy?
It was supposed to be sent over yesterday afternoon.
Okay.
You have another, you have this operation in another location?
Yes, we've been operating at several different resorts now, and our principal property at the moment is the Holiday Inn Oceanside, but we're also at the Driftwood Resort.
Okay, so you have this insurance already in place for another operation?
Yes, we've had our insurance, and actually the city beaches have been covered for anything in advance for the last 3 years.
That's fine. That was my only concern. Thank you, Mayor.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Bach?
Mr. Fletcher?
Yes.
Ms. Graves?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mayor Winger?
Yes.
Just to address
Comment.
your concerns about the use of the beach, percentage of use of the beach, whatever, of course it would be. Whatever's best for the city.
Thanks.
I'm looking at the gentleman in the blue shirt.
Yes, take care.
Yeah. All right, we go to B3, a resolution authorizing the city of Vero Beach, Florida to enter into a supplemental joint participation agreement with the state of Florida Department of Transportation for access road improvements, FDOT number 431038-1-94-01 requested by the airport director. Do you want Eric to talk to this, or do you want
Either way, I will tell you what this is doing is Airport Drive is going to be improved. It also addresses a bridge issue over the canal that has been something that has been sort of nagging at the city for several years now. So two things that we really want to really show appreciation for. One is the state is paying the bulk of the cost, the 80%, but the other is this is really an example of the coordination and communication between two departments of the city, that being the airport and the Public Works. Public Works has had this on their agenda for many years. Funding was an issue, and through the airport we were able to acquire the funding. So between those joint efforts, I think we're bringing together a project that has sort of been on our radar for many years.
Okay, public hearing. Seeing no one who wishes to come forward, council comment, Mrs. Turner?
I just wanted to agree with Mr. O'Connor. I think it was great cooperation with Mr. Ventura and Mr. Falls to finally get this bridge over the Main Reef Canal replaced, because it has been on our capital programs for a long time and without any hope of any funds. So thank you.
All right, do I have a motion?
So
Move to second.
Oh. I was going to give it to you.
Mrs. Bach, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fletcher?
Yes.
Ms. Graves?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mayor Winger?
Yes. All right, we go to number 4, first readings. These are by title for ordinance and resolutions that require a future public hearing. That public hearing would be on April 15th.
Yes, sir.
For each of these, there are 2 of them. Okay, 4A is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Vero Beach, Florida, repealing the previously adopted water and sewer rate structure and charges for service in the unincorporated areas located within the city's water and sewer utility service area, adopting an amended water and sewer rate structure and charges for such unincorporated areas, providing for an effective date requested by City Council. The effective date is?
April 15th.
All right. Staff comment, please.
Yes, this is in order to address one of the major concerns the County Commission had in our discussions up to this point over the franchise agreement. The one thing that kept coming up at every meeting was that they wanted the residents and the customers within the unincorporated areas to have the same rates and charges that the county has, and so this is our attempt to address that concern.
All right, before we have council discussion, is there anyone for public hearing on this? Seeing no one, we move to council discussion. Mr. Turner?
Just have a question then. By doing this is not imposing any additional cost on the city in implementing this rate change, Mr. O'Connor?
No, it's not, because we already have the rate structure in place with the Indian River Shores as a section of our organization, and I think there's it's less than $1,000 to transfer and place these customers under that same rate structure. But it's a relatively small number.
Further discussion.
Motion to approve for second reading on April 15th.
Second.
Mrs. Bach?
Mr. Fletcher?
Yes.
Ms. Graves?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mayor Wiener.
Yes. We move to 4B, an ordinance of the City of Vero Beach, Florida, amending the Code of the City of Vero Beach, Chapter 58, Article 2, Division 4, Police Officers Retirement Fund by amending Section 58-98 relating to compensation and Section 58-108 relating to credited service to provide compliance with the current collective bargaining agreement, providing for conflict and severability, providing for codification, providing for an effective date, requested by the Police Pension Board. Jim, I would throw this to you, I would believe.
Yes, this is to be in conformance with the contract we have with the police union as it stands right now, and also in conformance and standing of the state law.
I will open this to public hearing. Seeing no public hearing, council comment or discussion as you see fit. Seeing none, a motion?
Move to adopt as presented.
This would be for public hearing April 15th.
April 15th, yeah.
Second.
So we're approving it to be heard a second time, April 15th. Mrs. Bach?
Mr. Fletcher?
Yes.
Ms. Graves?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mayor Wiener.
Yes. Mrs. Bach, City Clerk matters.
I have none, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, under City Clerk's office, I would like to bring it council's attention. There was an article in the Press Journal on improving transparency. And they had done a survey of, I'll just look at the cities, 47 cities involved. And the sites were rated on several categories: financial accountability, public meetings, contact information, public records, ease of use, etc. And the average score for the cities was 52 out of 100. And glad to note that Vero Beach led the Treasure Coast cities with a score of 63, which I think is great, and want to commend Ms. Vaca and our staff. Of course, I can't quite be satisfied with just a 63 when the highest score for a city was Jacksonville at 80. So I'd love to see us look more at Jacksonville's website as well and look at what else we can do to keep improving and raising our scores.
Yeah, we
Thank
still
you.
have some work to do, but I was ecstatic when I read that.
Yes, I was very pleased. Thank you.
All right, well, Mrs. Bach, do you have anything further?
No, sir.
We'll move on to the city manager's meetings, and we added an item there. Jim, I'll pass it on to you, please.
This is amendment to leases, and we have one of our largest tenants at the airport that would like to amend the lease where he's going to get a private equity firm to underwrite the lease. But maybe I'll turn it to Wayne because it's more of a legal issue as to the.
They actually have, I believe, 5 leases with the city at the airport for airport property, and 2 of those leases are a more recent version of what we call Attachment B, which is the real lengthy part of the leases that we attach. It's kind of the standard terms, and in those, there's language about mortgaging leaseholds. It says it has to be with strictly licensed and like registered lenders such as banks or mortgage companies within the state of Florida. Private equity firms don't fit under that. So they've asked that they be able to use this lender that they've got lined up, and they've actually scheduled this week for a closing. That's why we put this together for them to ask the council to approve that amendment for those 2 leases. It'll make it consistent with all 5 then that they can use this private equity lender for their mortgage, their refinance.
The risk is very small to the city, and the fact that we obviously retain the property, they cannot lien the property itself. So what we're just doing is allowing them to have the flexibility of a private equity partner.
Wayne, what happens when somebody has some work done on this lease or another lease and they fail to pay all the contractor? Does the contractor place a workman's lien against the property?
No, actually, the only thing that the tenant has is a leasehold interest. That's the right to possess
So just
the property.
the right to possess the property for
right,
business.
and that's what, in other words, this mortgage lien would only be against that interest. It's not against the real property. It's only against that interest. And what happens, say they default on their mortgage, the mortgagee then steps into their shoes. We have had this happen, I think, at least once before, where the bank came in that case and took possession of the property, and we did work out a resolution with them for the property.
Okay, so this isn't new territory.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any public comment on this? Seeing none, further council comment or resolution as you see fit.
I think you just need concurrence from the council to go ahead and proceed
Well,
with this, so you need approval.
Go ahead and vote on it to make sure that we're clear that it's okay to make those amendments.
I'd move for approval.
Second.
Mrs. Bach?
Mr. Fletcher?
Yes.
Ms. Graves?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mayor Ware?
Yes. Are there further matters for the city manager that any?
I just have one other comment in keeping with the tone that we had on our website and the transparency. We now have the comprehensive annual financial report is now on our website. So this usually becomes a topic of conversation around budget time. So everybody can get it sort of a head start on it. It was on time and under budget this year. Right, Cindy?
We'll have no more of that.
Are there further questions for the city manager from anyone? Seeing no further questions, how about for the city attorney? Are there any further
I
questions?
have an issue with not for the city attorney. When Mr. Barquette got up and said he didn't have to be sworn in, all the time I've ever seen an attorney, they have to be sworn in if they're testifying to fact. If they're giving argument, they do not have to be. Is that correct? Am I?
Mr. Barquette, I think, does try to tend to stretch that, but I agree. My position has always been if you're going to testify as a fact witness, you get sworn in.
Get sworn in.
If
Okay.
you're just making argument and presenting your case, that's fine.
That's
you
a
don't
different.
need to be sworn.
Yeah. Okay. We agree. Thank you.
All right. City council matters, old business. Mrs. Turner, this is your agenda item.
Well, sorry, back on the city attorney. I guess
sorry.
I was just hoping that we'd be able to get a legislative update, on the bills that are going on and how those that particularly affect the city of Vero Beach.
Sure. Real quickly, I believe 813 and 861 were led to believe that that's 813 is the water and sewer. It's the statewide bill having to do with PSC oversight and what have you. And then 861 is the one that had to do with PSC regulation of any utility that purchased power basically from FMPA. Those were led to believe that are pretty much dead. They haven't made it out of committee. In fact, 861 I don't think was ever even considered, at least not yet. Of course, the legislative session is still ongoing, but we've been told it's not likely that they'll make it out of committee. I think 1287, 1289 were the two local bills. They're assigned to committee, but they have not been calendared or put on an agenda. And if they're never put on the agenda, they'll just never be considered. And
They don't die in committee. They don't even get to committee, right?
They just never get. The 813 was retained originally, but then when it was brought back, it didn't make it out. The other one, I don't remember the number. How about the Jim? Maybe about the sewer and septic tanks.
Oh, the
step system.
That's I think it's 1555 or something like that.
1055.
1055.
And Senate Bill 1306.
And in that legislation, I did talk to Representative Mayfield as early as yesterday morning. And for some clarification, because it was going into one of her committees, she seemed to still be very positive on it. We were having some issues where the septic tank industry or business or lobbyist, we did not have a problem with the requirement that when the septic tank was pumped, it was pumped by a certified septic tank firm. That was in our plan anyway. Mm-hmm. And writing that into legislation is not an issue with us. But then they went off and started talking about the drain fields being inspected. They're only for emergencies, so we had some real reservations to us. That was just going to drive up a cost that was unnecessary. I explained that to Representative Mayfield, and I think she was prepared to discuss it at the committee level if necessary.
And the remaining one is the vacation, which is Senate Bill 356, which passed, and House Bill 307, Where are we on that? Does anyone?
And it looks like there's differences between the two bills, and the one that's most problematic, I think it was the Senate, and I don't have them in front of me, but I think it was the Senate that wanted to just repeal the restriction in its entirety having to do with local governments couldn't regulate. But I think it's the House of Representatives version, the way it's finally worked out to this point, I believe there's a 7-day, in other words, you can't regulate uses longer than 7 days. In other words, that would be your limit. So, and again, of course, the city's case is still in the appellate court, and if the current code is upheld, we would obviously still probably try to hang our hat on that legislation anyway.
And it was, as of yesterday, there's a legislative update on Monday. It was going to a committee as of today, so we don't really know where it is as of today.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, moving along. On old business, nitrogen loading of the Indian River Lagoon. And this has been a long process, but we finally have completed the task. The results of just kind of summarize some of the results of the studies that had been done. We reviewed the Federal Department of Environmental Protection established the total maximum daily load. And what we're doing was trying to quantify the city's contribution to the nitrogen and phosphorus loading in the lagoon. So we took the Department of Environmental Protection's standards, or quotas that they have given us, and did a modeling of the city. We determined Vero Beach consists of approximately 11% surface area of sub-basin B draining into the lagoon. So we used that to try to quantify the amounts. So under the Federal Department of Environmental Protection target, we have, and I really just looked at the stormwater instead of the wastewater numbers because there's still controversy whether those can be traded to one to the other. But under the City of Vero Beach's model, we still needed a reduction of 3,200 pounds per year of nitrogen to be reduced. And phosphorus, we were under those limits. But I still had some questions on the PLSM model. This is a different modeling technique, and it gave to what I consider significant variation or deviation. I think our progress under our model certainly was superior. But where I'm going with this is that the city has implemented several projects to reduce our loadings, and those consists of the injection well, the RO system, reduced our nitrogen and phosphorus to zero on those projects. We installed 20 second-generation baffle boxes, reducing 19% of nitrogen and 15% of phosphorus. At Humiston Park, we installed an EOPTF, which is an up-to-the-date baffle-type box system, and reducing the nutrient in that area by 90%. Continuing with street sweeping and drain cleaning, we remove about 330 tons of debris from our streets annually. And you also can get a credit for education outreach. But I guess through this whole exercise, what we need to focus on is what additional reductions are required by the City of Vero Beach. And we're looking at about 960 pounds a year of nitrogen to be removed, and that's within the phosphorus limits. Of course, that's assuming that we get any credit on the wastewater treatment area. If we do not, then we'd need to decrease it by 14,091 pounds per year. And I apologize getting into all these numbers. But I think that what I want everybody to take home is that, hey, we've gone through our system. We have looked at the targets that we are being given for nitrogen and phosphorus levels. We have taken those projects and seen how much we were able to reduce that loading, and to try to quantify what we do have remaining. So from here, we need to prepare a project list to address continuing to reduce the nitrogen loading, prioritize that list, We need to review each of these projects and let's determine the cost per pound of nitrogen removed. Which of these actions that we're taking are the most effective, cost effective? So continue to expand on those. And with council's support, I would like to request that be our next step.
Makes a lot of sense to me.
I want to commend our public works. This, like I said, this has been a long, involved project. I think we're way ahead of the curve of any other communities in our county in quantifying our pollution. And that is, to me, is the critical step in being able to effectively diminish it. Thank you.
Is there consensus from the council that what Mrs. Turner proposes is the right course?
Yes, I agree.
That's the right direction.
Putting a cost, put a label of a dollar mark on a pound is the right way to go.
Ms. Graves?
I agree. I want to make sure that staff has the resources to do that study.
Monty will come forward. I think we have resources if given time.
Okay, no, exactly.
Monty Falls, Director of Public Works, and Councilmember Vero, thank you for bringing this up today. This has been a really time-consuming project. Bill's kind of been stuck in his office with his Do Not Disturb sign up since we started back in September. The report, as you've pointed out, the major points show that we're on the right path, and we agree wholeheartedly with what you're suggesting, and we would like to do that, like to talk to you about upcoming projects as we move through our budget session. We've done most of the major outfalls with the exception of the lateral E canal, which I spoke to you about. It was delayed because of the Vero man excavation. Mm-hmm. When that's complete and we get to go ahead to do something up there, we have a project that will address that, which is a major outfall, which will treat a lot of the area, which is that bang for the buck we're looking at. And we're looking at a new, a different type of device there that would also clean the sediment and also have some vegetative harvesting where we would take the mat of materials that we would have that has the uptake of the nitrogen and phosphorus, harvest that out, and then put new vegetation back in to do that. We're also doing some smaller projects right now in the Lantana Lane area. Where we did the outfall project, we're using a product called FlexiPave. It's a recycled asphalt type product that goes on top of the inlets that filters the material before it goes in, filters the debris. It can be cleaned with the street sweeper instead of the vacuum truck. So we can use that on some of the smaller locations around. City manager just approved us doing it on an alley we're going to do with some recycled asphalt milling. So we're looking at different things that we can do. Bill and Matt Mitz have been real proactive in researching these and finding some things that we can do that are affordable. And we hope to do that lateral E with another 319 grant as we had approved there once before that enabled us to do the Humiston project. But again, thank you for that, and we support your recommendation.
Thank you.
I think we have consensus on that one, so that's all you need, is it not?
That is correct. We'll proceed.
You don't need a vote. All right, we'll move on to City Council member matters. B, new business. It says returning. It means refunding electric debt of 2008. And this is nothing more than the City Council endorsing what the two commissions said, which was we should pay off the approximately $3 million debt with cash. And I have no further comment on it beyond that.
Do we need a motion, or we just?
I would like to have a motion and a vote, and then it's a matter of record, and we'll go on with it.
All right, motion to approve.
Second.
Mrs. Bach? Or we can do this voice. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No one opposed.
We will proceed.
All right. That brings us to Ms. Graves' Community Rail Coalition.
I was contacted by a group of citizens and their nonprofits and private businesses, and also Andrea Coy from the Sebastian City Council is liaisoning, and some other people from different entities. And so the request was, does the City of Vero Beach want to liaison with this committee? It will allow us to kind of be in contact with the other groups. We do have the Rail Commission, which serves us very well, but this is another option. So I put it forth.
Why can't the rail committee serve as that vehicle?
Well, I think what they're looking for is since Andrea Coy, it would give cities in the same area direct contact with one another to talk and.
Mr. Fletcher, I think it would be appropriate for this coalition to have an elected official, if possible, on that as our liaison. I think the chairman and the Rail Commission can provide that information through to whoever you appoint as the liaison. But I think with Andrea Coy and those type of folks, it's really more elevated to the elected official positions.
Okay.
Well, would Ms. Graves like to be the person, if that's appropriate? But it has to be coordinated with I think Mr. Fletcher's point.
I have just heard a volunteer in the form of Ms. Graves.
You bring it forward, you volunteer.
I'm happy to do it. I would, if I can't attend a meeting though, is someone else willing to go?
Yeah, everything's negotiable. We can.
If anyone would like to serve as a backup on this.
I'll serve as backup, but you've been backing me up more than I've been doing, really.
Well, then I'll miss a few.
Mr. Mayor, while we're on the subject of this rail, I think it's time for us to derail all aboard. I mean, and the only action that we could really do is to stop the funding. You know, no private rail, passenger rail, has ever been sustaining, much less profitable. Obviously very concerning how our letter came out to Negron, because we know what the press will read. They'll read that first sentence that it's just that the city of Vero Beach supports the effort.
I understand.
And I do not believe that is the case.
No.
And I would like to request that council have a resolution that the city of Vero Beach opposes all aboard. And we do not wish to see any federal or state funding for this project.
If you want to make a motion, I'm certainly willing to second it.
Thank you.
Before we go there, I mean, I don't think we should oppose all aboard Florida. I think we should oppose the public funding of all aboard Florida. If they're going to do this as a private agency, which they're not, it's okay. But I don't want public funding going on this. I think you're right. I don't think it is sustainable. I think they're going to have to lean on the public dollar.
No, initially it was brought forward. This was a private enterprise, Mr. Kramer, but it's clear now that they're looking for federal guaranteed loans. They were looking for Tiger loans that apply only to passenger train, and it's just a continual burden that's going to fall on all our taxpayers. So, with Mr. Winger's second, I call for a vote on having a resolution from the city.
Be sure you state so we understand. I don't have any problem with what either one of you is saying.
You want to oppose the public support of the program, is that correct?
Yes, funding? That we are opposed to the all aboard railroad. That it will cause a significant public funding. Deterioration in the quality to our community, and that we do not want to see any federal or state funds.
Agreed.
I'm opposed to the public funding, but I'm not opposed to a private business, trying to do something. I don't think they should have public funds, but I think saying you're publicly opposed to a business doing something with what it owns is not something I will support. But I do not support the public funds for it.
And I'll tell you one thing, what you've seen so far in the way of applications for public funds is the tip of the iceberg. It will go to every known source.
And I'd suggest, that we could send letters to Governor Scott, who's pledged, $200 million for a train station. Yep. This is, our tax money being used for that, as well as to write to the Federal Rail Administration. And I believe we could put their website up on our website. It's www.fra.gov.
I would suggest that you put a letter together that present to the mayors for the signature.
Yeah, why don't we? I would have no problem with Mrs. Turner and Mr. Comet writing the letter or drafting the letter. This last letter is what it is. But the public funding of this thing doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
It doesn't.
So again, we have a motion on the floor. Like I said, it's time to derail all aboard. And if council approves, would bring forth the resolution for our next meeting.
Right. Sounds good. You want to vote?
Is this now for a resolution or a letter?
For a letter.
I think a resolution possibly.
A resolution has more weight.
More weight. That's fine.
And I would just suggest that perhaps Ms. Turner could give me a skeleton of what you want to say, and we'll take it from there and put it in proper format and everything.
Certainly, Mr. Conlon. Thank you.
You know, the reality of this is to have the public at any level, federal or state, pay for this is a bit of a problem. And then beyond that, the people of Vero Beach get no benefit out of this. All we get is a lot of problems. I will tell you, Fortress Capital has got $58 billion worth of assets. And I will tell you that Fortress Capital owns significant plots of land in downtown Miami and Fort Lauderdale and Palm Beach. And I will tell you that they may have reasons other than a railroad to run this as far as, you know, what will be built in those areas. So I'm not sure it won't happen, but the reality of it is I agree in the public money that what we just agreed to, and there's no benefit to the public of this town, none.
And not many other towns.
Yeah, I work for this one. But I agree with you. I don't disagree.
Thank you.
All right.
I don't think we called the motion.
I beg your pardon?
I don't think we settled the motion.
So we're just going to come back with a resolution language and pass it next meeting?
Right. No,
Consensus.
I think you have consensus. That would bring it to, I suppose we're on to our own comments at that point in time. And I have one comment, and I said it earlier to Mr. Stradley, and I think under rather difficult circumstances, he did a good job yesterday. You know, he's running the commission, and he had some extracurricular support. But regardless of that, I would like to see the objectives of these commissions for us to vet to be sure we're all aboard of those. I mean, the commission, excuse the all board, but that we all agree to them. I mean, he's reaching back to the prior commission and the objectives they had and bringing them forward to this commission. And I'm not sure that's not true of other commissions. So, Mrs. Bach, I would like to see what their objectives are to be sure that this council concurs that they have the right objectives. And I'm not saying they have the wrong, if that's agreeable. See no objection, Mr. Kramer?
No objections.
You want to move forward? Then I have nothing else.
I was out of town last week, so I don't have an awful lot of things going on. However, I just want to remember everybody's got the Downtown Friday, the stroll coming up Friday. I'll wait on that, but I'll go ahead and pass, given the time.
Mrs. Turner.
Thank you. Under my matters, I guess I was of some concern to find that the Florida Municipal Power Association is circulating blog articles to their board members regarding the sale of Vero Beach Electric. Why they have chosen this one media source to circulate to their members, I find a bit disconcerting. And hopefully on the April 17th meeting, that open board meeting that I attend, that we'll be able to provide some other information to the board members to make sure they're getting a full view. As I was preparing to speak to the Storm Grove Middle School civic classes, and I believe quite a few of the other council members will be doing so, one of the things that they had on there asked us to speak about were the duties of a council member. And so I started putting some things down on paper, whether it's legislating for the city or directing enforcement of ordinances, board appointments, etc. But still, to me, the most important is providing community leadership. That as council members, we must do our own research, be educated on the issues. We're not here just to review staff recommendations, but to identify needs and prepare solutions to issues. Resolving the sale of our electric is the most critical issue facing our community. Our residential rates are up to 32% higher, and our commercial rates averaging 42%. Over $20 million is lost each year in our community. Our economic viability as a city depends on the positive resolution of this issue. So I ask all our council members to step up, be leaders, Let's move the sale forward together. Want to commend the Indian River County Chamber on the new mobile app. If you haven't downloaded it, now while you have your grandchildren visiting, get them to help you and get it on your phone so you can make your restaurant reservations, know all the events that are going on in town. But it is a terrific asset. Want to congratulate the Vero Beach Theater Guild for their groundbreaking and as they're getting ready to expand our community theater area, and the Treasure Coast Food Bank with their Wine, Women, and Shoes event. Everybody will continue to see a lot of young people in town as Dodgertown, the Canadian Football League, will be here between April 10th and 15th. They also have the National Soccer coaches. And on April the 15th, we have a big game from Brevard County Manatees and the Lakeland Flying Tigers will be playing, and the proceeds of that game will benefit the Indian River United Way. So hope to see everything there. And 55th annual Easter egg hunt for all of those who have enjoyed that event in our city will be held at Mulligan's on Saturday the 12th at 10 o'clock. Thanks.
Thank you.
I was able to attend the planning and zoning meeting for Original Town. It was great to see a lot of residents there. A lot of work is going into that neighborhood. I also got to attend the Charter High School's Walbasso Day, where students from the Walbasso School came to Charter, and there was all kinds of activities and art and music and a petting zoo, and both sets of children from both schools were learning a lot about each other, and it was really great to see. And I just want to remind everybody the Hibiscus Festival is Saturday, April 12th, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. right down here in downtown. Food, games, lots of great music, lots of great art. So it's a great time to get out and be downtown. Thanks.
I'll just do one. I went to Stewart for the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, and there was standing room only. Had to bring chairs in for a lot of people. And it was everyone that spoke, everyone that was there, with the exception of one person who worked for All Aboard Florida, was against it. I mean, it was some interesting testimony, and one person got a little bit carried away and had to be sat down. But we're not alone in opposing this, is what my message to you is. They're going to change the approach, I'm sure, but they are going to look for money anywhere they can get it. You are so correct, and that's going to be a good thing to put out to our legislators. We need to do that. But it was a very busy meeting, and we'll leave it at that. And let's go to lunch.
Before you go, one last thing that I forgot about. Lynn George is going to be retiring around May the 1st.
Oh, my gosh.
And we have just hired a new human resources director. Her name is Gabrielle Manis. She comes up out of the south from us, and she is bringing a lot of expertise. She was a very active attorney with labor issues in Ohio.
Oh, good answer.
She is the president of a firm down in Palm Beach County, and which does human resources. She is not with the Florida bar, but she still brings that expertise, and so she'll be joining us hopefully around the 21st of this month.
Got big shoes to fill.
She does. And we've already sent her copies of the union contracts and those type of things, so she hopefully will hit the ground running when she gets here.
All right. If there's no further business, we are adjourned.